Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I'm the host, as always. Joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. We've got the Acolyte season finale tonight. So after this, I'll hop on and watch a pretty bad Star Wars show. But I'm a completionist. I will see it through.
Yeah, 100%. Especially after, like, if you watch a show that has, like, a good episode in the middle of it, but the rest of it is bad, it's just kind of like, well, maybe it's good again at some point, and so you just have to finish it. So I'm kind of at that point with one of these other shows that I've been watching, the Vikings show, Vikings Valhalla. I love the original Vikings, but unfortunately, this one does not live up to the original, as is usually the case. But it's all good. Okay, so today we are going to do a Chargers mock draft of sorts. This idea we've hinted at this episode a few times, but Brandon Thorn and Andrew Whitworth and Jeff Schwartz drafted their offensive line of choice for the next 3 seasons. And so we are going to do that with the Chargers players. Both of us in this exercise will get Justin Herbert. So that we figured that would sway the poll one way or the other. But we're going to go 1 through 12, drafting players on the Chargers for the future. So in this exercise, age matters, contract matters. This is specifically like our team. It's not like we're drafting them with like Joe Ortiz's mind in with his way of operating in mind, so to speak. So theoretically, like Khalil Mack could be selected, and whoever takes that player is going to project that he is still on the team for the next 3 seasons, or potentially not, depending on your logic or whatever the case may be. But essentially, this is kind of a build your franchise with the Chargers players, Chargers roster for the next 3 seasons. So it should be fun.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back at last year's and compare to just trying to sort this roster this year, because last year, I mean, the first picks, Herbert, Slater, Derwin, Lindsley, Bosa, Allen, Mike Williams, Khalil, QJ, Zion, Michael Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Trey Pipkins, Eckler, JC Jackson. I could easily work through a conversation last year about how 6 or 7 of those players are Pro Bowl players, or some of them could make All Pro.
Yeah.
And now looking at the roster this year, after the first 5 picks, arguably, it gets tremendously more difficult than it was last year. I'm now looking at that group last year. It's not like they all worked out.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do better this year, but it's definitely a different roster, that's for sure. That'll rely on a new wave of players rather than some of the older players that we expected a lot from last year.
Yeah. If anybody missed this episode, we did this last year with Daniel Popper on the show, and it was a ton of fun. We had a great conversation about each of these players. But last year's exercise, you probably felt great about taking Corey Lindsley within the top 5, and then now he's retired. So some of that is just unfortunate timing. You just never really know how much of a career these players have. Like, Joey Bosa has had a ton of medical injuries. Maybe his NFL career ends up being shorter than Khalil Mack. You just never know. So we're going to have conversations about each of these players. Again, this is for the next 3 seasons. So, right. Contracts matter, age matters, all of that. So I am curious to see ultimately how we weigh certain things here. But as we go through the show, feel free and comment and ask questions. If we have time, we're going to mention a certain wide receiver requesting a trade today, potentially. So we'll get to that maybe at the end of the show today. If not, we'll probably not touch on it at all. But Tyler also wrote an article today regarding Stephon Gilmore and the Chargers' potential interest in him, or the assume, not assume, that's the wrong way, but why they should be interested in Stephon Gilmore. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
So please go check that out.
Yep. Did one on Aiyuk this morning and Gilmore later, because, got to talk about something this offseason. So, two discussed names. I think one is unlikely and one is this thing that should happen yesterday.
Yeah.
You'll have to read to find out.
Yeah. Go read, go click those articles. All right, Tyler, let's get into this. We do have a sheet, of course. Like I mentioned earlier, both of us get Justin Herbert in this exercise. Tyler is going to be going first. I will go second. This is not a snake draft, so we're going to alternate back and forth here. Just because doing a snake, I feel like is with two people is kind of redundant. So Tyler will go first. I'll go second. Tyler third. I'll go fourth, etc., etc. Again, we're going 1 through 12. So each of us are ultimately going to end up with basically 13 players on our respective rosters. Theoretically, you could draft the specialists if you want to draft a specialist. So we'll see where and Terrace Davis come off. So should be fun. All right, Tyler, you have the first pick here. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so no surprise here. Based on how we've talked to him, it's no surprise. It's Rashawn Slater first up for me. I think could be the best player at his position on the team. Of course, he's been not so healthy the last couple of years. That has not stopped me from taking a player who is an all-pro potential player who also is still on a rookie contract. I have him this year. I have him next year if it's the fifth-year option, and potentially moving forward with an extension, which he will get. So I have no problem selecting him. He's one of the few players where contract and performance are both very high and very lucrative.
Yeah, 100%. For people necessarily worried about the contract here, Rashawn obviously has this season and next season on the fifth-year option, and then you would have the first year of the extension. So, he's expensive in the sense where he's not on the start of his rookie contract, but really if you do this the right way, you have him on a very cost controlled contract over the next 3 seasons where you're probably paying him an average like of 17-16 million dollars depending on what exactly the cap number would be in the third year. So to me, this is a no-brainer. If I were first, Rashawn would have been my first pick as well.
Yeah, we took Herbert off the board because that was the obvious first pick. So then I get the first pick, and the obvious first pick was going to be Slater. So the draft starts now, I guess.
Yeah. There's a number of different ways I can go here. When we did this exercise last year, I got boxed out at several different positions. So I'm going to try and avoid that from happening this year.
Okay.
So even though we have not seen him play a single snap yet, I'm going to take Joe Alt because I need an offensive tackle. And I feel like the Chargers have enough players at other positions for me to grab one of them later, but I didn't want to risk the potential here of missing out on the 2 highest ceiling offensive linemen on the Chargers. So I'm going to take Joe Alt here. I expect him to have a good rookie season. I expect him to be a fine to potentially great NFL player. And I want to make sure I can start my protection plan for Justin Herbert right off the bat.
Yeah, it makes sense. I would have taken him with the next pick, I believe, depending on what you did here with your first pick. Obviously, you go with Joe Alt. I think there's a question mark, but this is the 5th overall pick at offensive line in an organization that will help the offensive line develop. Yeah. It's a great selection. It's difficult to say that anybody is safe, of course, like a safe pick, safe selection, but he's going to be as safe as you can get. So I completely understand why you go with Joe Alt here. That's a good decision. So I will continue the theme of rookie contracts. And this is where it started to get rookie contract versus veteran play here. And so I am going to go with Thule here. Do I believe that he is better than Khalil Mack right now? I do not. I believe Khalil Mack is a better player right now. Theoretically, Joey Bosa, when healthy, is also a better player. But this is for the next 3 seasons. And I think based on what he did his rookie year and based on the fact that this is my team, not necessarily the Chargers, Thule can start. And if he takes that year 2 jump on my theoretical team, easy surplus value with a 2nd-round contract. So I'm going with Thule here, even though I do believe there are other better players and technically starters on the current Chargers. It's my team, so I'm going Thule.
No, that's more than fair to me. I think, this is a guy who's really flown under the radar because the Chargers were bad last year. But if you look at every single metric outside of like pass rush win rate, he was right there neck and neck with Will Anderson, who was like a unanimous defensive rookie of the year. And, he gets honorable mention in the edge rusher ranking. So I think Thule taking him there is fair. I'm going to continue with the straight up rookie concept, and I'm going to go actually Ladd McConkey here.
Interesting.
I want to make sure that I can secure Justin Herbert's future in this exercise. And I am a little bit concerned about the age of some of the defensive players.
Right.
The poor play of some of the defensive players. So I wanted to make sure I get Justin Herbert his blindside protector. In this instance, I probably would have Joe Alt stick at left tackle. And then I'm going to give him his, future wide receiver one, even if he is not the wide receiver one this year. So, the rookie quarterback is becoming, the rookie quarterback contract obviously has been a cheat code. The wide receiver rookie contract, I think, is going to start being looked at that same way. I mean, Brandon Aiyuk, who we might talk about later, is going to fetch like $31 million on the open market if he gets traded. These wide receivers who are elite wide receivers are going to be basically start making, third tier quarterback money. Like Justin Jefferson and Daniel Jones, like, are not that far apart from a contract perspective. So I want the chance to have an elite wide receiver on a rookie contract. Even though he doesn't have the 5th year option, you still get the potential of a 4-year savings contract. And we really believe in Ladd. Maybe not this year, but in this instance, I think maybe as the clear-cut wide receiver one on my team, I think there's a very clear path to surplus value.
Yeah, really, really great decision there. He was a top 5 player for me on my theoretical board. I just thought of like 10 players because after this, it feels like a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Pardon me, not a crapshoot, but it's more of a mixed bag. It's more difficult to parse some of these players.
Yeah.
McConkey, I totally get. A borderline 1st round pick for them, pick they traded up for. If he's not wide receiver one this year, he's definitely that next year. They believe in him. We believe in him. It was a great selection. So good one there. Because you went McConkey, I was going to go McConkey. I can't go McConkey. So therefore I will, especially with 2 rookie contracts, I will go with Khalil Mack now at this point. I'm happy to get him here with a 3rd selection. Sure. There's only 1 year left on his deal. In the theoretical team, we could see him get an extension. Even if he only gives me 2 more seasons and maybe he retires after that, I'm much more willing to bet that his next 2 seasons are better than basically anyone else's on this list, arguably better than what Thule's could have been. Age is, of course, the factor here to consider, but we just talked about him yesterday with 80 pressures, 17 or 18 sacks. I'm okay if he takes a step back and gets 60 and 15. Like, that'd be great, honestly. And then Thule is the young gun there anyway. So the age, the contract is a factor here. That's why he slid. Yeah. But Khalil Mack at this point, I got to take him.
Yeah, I think with Khalil, like we feel comfortable about him having an effective, to potentially, Pro Bowl season in 2024. That age cliff, unfortunately, is going to come at some point, and I think we could see him kind of transition into like a mercenary type role, by the end of this particular exercise. But if we were not doing contract considerations, if this was just like straight up draft the best players, like obviously Khalil Mack is going to be higher on this list. So good pick there. I'm a little torn here because Joey's health is such a wild card. I think when healthy, he is a better football player than Derwin James.
Yeah.
But I believe that Derwin's ability to stay healthier at this point in time in his career is just a more sure thing. So I'm kind of debating here. Like, I kind of think there's a real chance that Joey retires like sooner rather than later, just because of all of his injuries and things like that. But like, I need a pass rusher at some point. I'm going to go with Derwin James. I'm going to go with the more sure thing. I know he is coming off of a, poor season for his standards. But I really believe that was a scheme thing. I believe that was a misuse of his talents aspect of coaching. So in this instance, we believe Derwin bounces back. I believe Derwin is the safer, more reliable player and gives me a potential star centerpiece on my defense. So I'm going to go Derwin, even though I do need a pass rusher at some point.
Yeah, no, that's a really good option. It's probably him or Derwin or Joey or maybe one of the rookie contracts. So I totally get with going with him there. You're hoping, of course, for the bounce back. We all have question marks on our selections. Derwin has a great ceiling ahead of him potentially. Cody Alexander just reposted. I can't remember the name of the site that he reposted, but they talked about Derwin James and his rankings. They had him as safety 4 still. So he at least is going to be, I think, solid this year, but that ceiling is so high. So good decision there. This is tricky. So
it was Field Vision Sports was the site.
Thank you very much. Yeah. The tricky part for me here is trying to figure out how to work this in a theoretical defense. Technically, I could have 3 edge rushers, but I'm willing to let that third one slide and not box you out entirely here. The question comes down to, I think for me, other positions I don't have, or positions that in particular there's a drop off and I'm worried. And so because of that, and because of the contract he's still on, I'll go with Asante Samuel Jr. here.
Okay.
I think that at minimum, on a theoretical team, he could be a CB2. I think his coverage grades and what he does in coverage is worth the selection. And hey, this year we could see him take a step forward altogether. We'll see. But I'm worried about the corners after him. I feel like he's more valuable here than maybe a better player at their position, just because I'm so worried about that secondary after him.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned him, so I'm going to take Joey here. For me, as my 5th selection, or I guess 4th selection, I think that's more than okay. I think this is the range where he should be in this stage of his career.
Yeah.
Even though I have real concerns about him finishing this exercise, I just need a pass rusher. Like, I need somebody to come in and like hold the fort down and not leave me high and dry here. So I'm going to go with Joey. I still believe the high-end ceiling is there. It's just I'm so concerned about the floor at this point in time. Hoping that Ben Herbert, can do some magic here and get Joey healthy. And obviously, in the real-life Chargers, he doesn't have to play 80 snaps a game, so that should be good for him as well.
Yeah, no, great selection there. And he is obviously younger, so some of the risk you take with the health concerns, you also get some of the youth there, whereas Khalil Mack, it's maybe better health, but obviously much older. So good selection there. I see now that by taking 2 edge rushers, you get the free 3rd edge rusher. But Joey, it's a bummer to see that we had to wait this long for Joey, but that's just the nature of the situation the scenario right now and what he's been, not quite doing.
For anybody who's joining us right now, this is a draft for the next 3 seasons, contract age, all that stuff matters. So just wanted to point that out as some people coming to the chat right now. All right, Tyler, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, our top 5 would have definitely been different if it was just straight 1 year best players ranked.
Yeah.
I will take a player we're pretty excited about, continue with the rookie contracts. I'll go Junior Colson here. I think that he's a player who can crack honorable mentions as early as next season and can be one of the best in the league in 2 years just because of the jump start he has in the NFL. So linebacker isn't particularly a sexy, premium position, but I get a player who honestly could be one of the few guys on this entire scenario who can actually be top 10 at his position. So I believe in him. We believe in him. I'm going with Colson.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Pointing out in the chat, the mighty Kev, I think that's more than okay for Junior Colson at this point in time.
Yeah.
A little debate here I'm having is between 2 of the only former Tom Telesco draft picks that have been successful on day 3.
Yeah.
Obviously being Alohi Gilman and Trey Pipkins. So I believe that Trey's best spot is offensive tackle. That's very well known if you listen to this show. So that's really why I'm considering him here.
Yeah.
But I believe that Alohi Gilman is a better football player right now. And he's on one of the most affordable contracts on the team. Trey also has, a very affordable contract, but I believe I'm getting a better football player with Alohi. So I'm going to take Alohi next year and continue to add pieces to my defense and make sure, I can have some semblance of a positive defense here. So we've talked a lot about Alohi. I think we all really feel great about his chances in 2024 to have a true breakout season. He was really fantastic last year. But I think we see him take another step this year. So my defense really is, the Telesco defense of old with Derwin, Joey, and Alohi shining bright here.
Yeah, I love Alohi for sure. I was going to take him next, I believe, depending on what you did. And yeah, we certainly believe in him. Of the players that we've already drafted, Gilman was better at his position than most of them, if not better than Derwin James. Different skill sets, different roles, but still what Gilman brought and where he was ranked just as a safety was better than Derwin in most every single category. So Gilman's a great selection there. Before things completely run out and I'm forced to do the dreadful pick, I'm going to go with Josh Palmer just to make sure I do get a receiver here. If he's not wide receiver 1, I think he's wide receiver 1B this year. I think he cracks 1,000 receiving yards if he's healthy. That's the real big concern. I think if he had been healthy, he goes much higher. We feel better about him. Who knows if they even take McConkey, but he's had some concussions, some injuries. But I need a receiver, and I like Palmer, so let's go with him.
Yeah, so that leaves me with my former debates. I'll take Trey Pipkins here. I believe that this is a guy who can give you, at worst, solid, reliable offensive tackle play. At his best that we saw in 2022, he was an above average offensive tackle. So I'm going to keep him at his natural right tackle position, and I'm going to make sure that Justin Herbert has 2 bookend offensive tackles like he does in real life to, protect him and keep him upright. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, great idea there. My offensive line is definitely lacking so far, but then it gets into a funky situation. Sorry, so is Alt playing left tackle?
Yeah, in my scenario, Alt is playing left tackle.
Okay, gotcha.
And Pipkins will play right tackle, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, I like it. Who's left? This one starts getting really tricky because everyone's kind of in the same clump for me. I think I'm going to go with a player I think should have been on the rankings, but he wasn't. A bit of a surprise, but he's actually under contract for the next 3 years. I will go with Will Dissly here.
Okay.
I think that they need a legit tight end, a blocking tight end. Of course, I could have gone receiving tight end here, but Hurst, not really sure how many years he has. I know Dissly is going to be a good blocking, solid tight end, and he can do that after this contract too. So one of the best blocking tight ends, number 1 in pass blocking grade, number 2 in run blocking grade. No pressures allowed, no drops. Good player, solid player. Not exactly a receiving option, but I've got Palmer, so I'll take a blocker here as a way to get some sort of mild offensive line blocking play, even though he's not a lineman.
I mean, he's your 6th offensive lineman basically on most plays. So
yeah.
This feels like a good spot to take Zion. Unfortunately for us on this show, we wish that he would be going higher in this exercise.
Yeah.
I still believe in that ceiling. I believe that this situation is right for him. For him to get right. So in this scenario, obviously you keep him at left guard next to Joe Alt. And I have 3, I would say at least solid starters and potentially a lot higher ceiling to, protect Justin Herbert up front. So, Zion coming off the slate, obviously wish we were having a discussion about him earlier, but you get him for this year, 5th year option, year after that. So that part of it is pretty cool too.
Yeah, good choice there. It was tough because I like him more than where he went. We think we even feel better about him than there, but it's tough with the other stuff we need. If Zion doesn't work out this year and he takes a step back for some reason, then he's replaceable next year, unfortunately. Although he might just be locked in because they can't add another guard in the first round or something. But yeah, hope Zion does well, but we'll see. But yes, you've been not figured out, but they knew it was coming. They knew the Zion pick was coming.
Yeah. I used my brain a little bit more before I went with the hard pick with Zion. I could have tried to justify taking him at where I took Alohi, but I do have to be realistic at some point.
Yeah. Okay, how do I approach this one? I think this is where I start making the silly selection, but it is just Chargers for the next 3 years, not my fantasy football team. So I will officially go with Cameron Dicker here. We are going to get one of the best kickers in the NFL, Ryan Ficken's guy.
Yeah,
if he becomes the next Justin Tucker, I'm totally fine taking him over some of the other players on this list. Again, not a fantasy draft. Well, it is a fantasy draft, but not a fantasy football draft. And I'll go with Cameron Dicker here.
All right. That sounds good to me. I don't know how much I want to come back to this defense, but I do need a defensive tackle. I could, I think Bud Dupree probably deserves to get drafted at some point on this exercise, but I just, he is under contract for 2 years. I don't know what those 2 years are actually going to look like. So maybe I go there, but Yeah, I don't know if I want to touch the defense right now. I'll take Quentin. I'd go for a dart throw here. We liked Quentin a decent amount coming out of the draft. He still is a first round draft pick who's shown some potential. I believe he was completely misused in last year's role. So I'll take a dart throw on Quentin and try to potentially give Justin 2 receivers to build with for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Listen.
This is where the roster is at, folks.
Oh, yes. This is definitely a where the roster is at selection. Yeah. I think it's honestly fine to take him here as is, but it's also potentially great value to take him here. And I think you could look back on this in a year and feel really good about it. If he gets 750 yards this year, for him to be the 8th player, the 16th player taken, not bad. So I don't mind Quentin Johnston here at all. I thought you were going to go to this direction because I heard it. So I am going to touch on the defense. I will go with Morgan Fox at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of the Asante Samuel Jr. situation where I just want the guy I think is the best. And I'm not sure any pass rushing defensive tackle after him is quite worth it. So he's young enough to keep playing. He only has 1 more year left on his deal. If he gets another deal, it's a cheap deal. The last one was. This one will be cheap as well. I hope he does well and earns a solid deal, but I think Morgan Fox can play for a few more years, be a solid piece for the defense, and frankly, I'm worried about the rest of the group.
Yeah, that concern is warranted. He does turn 30 this year, for what it's worth. So you're getting his age 30, 31, and 32 seasons, essentially. I'm debating here between taking one of the corners maybe and taking Eboigbe, because I do need some kind of defensive line trench play outside of Joey.
Yeah.
Man, this is why the defense needs a lot of work, obviously, as we kind of pointing out. I guess theoretically I could talk myself into taking a Deion Henley or a Denzel Perryman, shore up the linebacker spot.
Yeah.
But of the defensive linemen remaining, if you include the edge rushers, I think I believe most that Eboigbe hits his ceiling. So I'm going to go there. And I think that, in the right situation, he could become a better pass rusher than he was in college. I really trust his ability against the run. The concern of obviously his neck injury is the big thing, but I need some reliable trench play, if not, potentially high ceiling. So I'll take a chance on Eboigbe here.
Okay. Good call. He was higher up than some other maybe projected starters for me just because of that upside, the rookie contract, etc.
Yeah.
Not bad there. So I got a Eboigbe written down. It's tough to blink first on running back.
Yeah. Very, very much so, because JK's career is so uncertain.
Yeah.
Gus is older, which nobody's really talking about. And then
right.
You obviously have the rookie.
Screw it. I'll go Darius Davis here.
You're going to be great on special teams, man.
Yeah, man. And Fick me trust. I know for sure Cameron Dicker and Darius Davis are going to be good on special teams.
Yeah.
If he continues to be an all-pro level returner, I don't mind. Obviously, I'm not taking him here to be a receiver. He could be. At this point, I need him. But he's a returner. And if Fick can take advantage of the new special teams rules and make things great. By the way, I haven't looked at it yet, but read Sean Syed's article.
So good.
He charted every XFL kickoff just to see how things were working in the XFL. So check that out. But I'll go with Darius Davis here. It does give me a weapon on offense, but it gives me a really good kick returner. Could be your next Sproles. We'll see.
Yeah, that article from Sean Syed is fantastic. It's real, true, like football sicko article content. So extremely well done. He's one of the best in the business. We've been fortunate to have him on the show a few times, and hopefully we can have him on again. Yeah. Okay, so I'll go Bud Dupree next. I feel like this is a fine spot for him. Again, 2-year contract. Not super positive I get a third. Not extremely confident that I get like super high-end edge rusher play, but I get a functional starter, and in this exercise, probably next year I can draft like hypothetically, an edge rusher next year. But just trying to get as stable of a defensive line as I can in this exercise. So I'll take Bud, who at the very least defends the run at a really high level, I think, and can be a functional pass rusher after that.
Yeah, good call there. Had to take him at some point. So yeah, really, really, really good call there. 2 years sounds good. At least you get 2 years out of him, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll finally blink. I will go with Gus Edwards here. If I'm gonna bank on a running back, it's at least him. I know people are very excited about J.K. Dobbins. There's no way I'm gonna take first the running back with several season-ending injuries as a guy to rely on for the next 3 seasons. So Edwards is, I believe, currently injured or banged up a bit. Seems like he'd be ready for training camp. But I'll go with him. He's at least on the team for a couple of years.
Yes, he is. And then I'll go with the rookie running back. I'll go with Kamani Vidal here. We really liked him. Obviously, Alex liked him more than anybody else. I do need a running back, trying to give Justin Herbert a reliable offense here, so to speak. So, we'll see if I take a tight end last, but at least I give Justin, 3 offensive line pieces, 2 receivers, and a running back in this exercise.
Yeah, somehow I ended up going with so much defense. I got Slater, thank goodness. Okay, so due to the lack of any significant offensive lineman after Slater, Disley does not count. I've got to take an offensive lineman. How the heck do I sort through this offensive line group? Bozeman is the starter. I don't know that I have 3 seasons from him. I don't even know if I'll have 1 good season from him. So I'm going to put my faith in Jamari Sawyer here.
Yeah.
And I don't need him to specifically play tackle or guard or whatever. I just know I'm going to have an offensive lineman that, should I continue with this scenario, I could find other ways to piece around him. But yeah, I'll go with Jamari here. 6th round contract, 2 years left. I don't mind it. I think he should be starting somewhere, but he just won't be this year so far.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Jamari, in your case, would you stick him at guard still, or is he playing right tackle for you?
He's probably better suited as a guard, so I will go with guard there. If Harbaugh's my coach, maybe he takes a step forward, So I'll go with Sawyer here, who, again, I am surprised he was beaten out so early by Pipkins, but we'll see how camp goes.
Yeah. The recently engaged Jamari Sawyer as well.
Yes.
So congratulations to him and his fiance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last pick here for me. With the 3 years in mind and with a lot of personal bias, I'm going to take Cam Hart as my last pick.
Oh, okay.
This is the remaining cornerback that I have the most faith in developing and becoming a reliable starter.
Yeah.
This, obviously you took Asante pretty early, and so I felt like I could kind of wait on the remaining cornerbacks.
Yeah.
I just, we could transition if we wanted to in a minute here, but I don't really have a ton of faith that Christian Fulton becomes what the Chargers hope he is. I don't trust either of the slot cornerbacks at this point in time. Like if Jasir had hit like the Chargers had previously hoped, maybe he is this selection here. Dean Leonard, the flashes have been fun, but I get a true like clean slate with Cam Hart, somebody who, listeners will know I had a top 50, top 60 grade on in the draft. Fell in the draft because of shoulder concerns, which I totally understand and did not know about at the time of grading him. But I believe in the ceiling here. I believe that this is the best chance for me to get, reliable cornerback play down the road. Obviously, we'll take some very big learning curves with him as my cornerback 1. But I'm willing to deal with it. I have a decent pass rush. I have the 2 safeties to help him out.
Yeah.
So, this is probably a good situation for him. So I'll just bet on the upside here and take a shot with my last pick.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how I would have played the corner group if I didn't have Asante Samuel Jr. or if I wanted a second corner. But I think Cam Hart was the right choice there, because of the contract. And Fulton, I hope he does well. But if we believe in coaching and scheme and mentor and all this stuff for him, that should apply to Hart too. And Fulton wasn't great last year. So Cam Hart, even if he's about the same level of play this year, hey, he's a rookie. You have years to go, years to develop him, get acclimated to the NFL, etc. And I certainly believe in him too. So Cam Hart as the next corner off the board was definitely the right choice.
Yeah. That was really the only decision. Like I thought about at several of these picks taking Deion Henley, but we just haven't seen it enough. And I wasn't crazy about Deion coming out of the draft. He's not usually the type of linebacker that I prefer to watch and study. So that is somebody that I think you can make an argument for taking in this exercise, but you took Junior Colson pretty early. That's a no-brainer. Like after you take Junior, there's no real reason to take a second linebacker. And for me, like I'm probably piecing linebacker together elsewhere in this hypothetical exercise. I just didn't feel like, he was worthy of taking him over Cam or Kamani just with their upside at their positions.
Yeah, definitely. I think people might be surprised he's not on there because of the rookie contract, but he's not LB1. He's not LB2. Technically, so far, he hasn't even been LB3. So I don't know how he's going to pan out. And frankly, unfortunately, as much as we like his personality and his potential, he is a former Telesco pick, and it just has not really panned out. For one reason or another, most of the selections on defense, round 3 for sure, have not exactly panned out for Telesco. So maybe new regime kickstarts things, but as of minicamp, he was LB4. So I think that, I would have not taken him in this exercise. I might have even gone with Perryman over him, but I didn't have to think about that after Colson. The one how close was like a Brendan Rice for you in this scenario?
If you had taken Quentin, I maybe would have considered it. If you took Palmer where you did, and then instead of Darius, you took Quentin. Like if I had not taken Quentin, you took Quentin somewhere between Dicker and Darius Davis, I maybe would have considered it. But I wasn't super high on Brendan Rice coming out of the draft, and I probably would have taken one of the tight ends or another one of the corners or somebody else like that. Unfortunately, he didn't really make my rankings.
So let me think of starters that are going to start for the Chargers this year that we flat out left off. So Bozeman, that's more of an age thing. You took Trey, we took all Zion, Slater, Edwards we took. So Hurst, sort of a starter.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with Chark. So most of the offense got taken up. Defense, no CB2 in Fulton, no slot corner in Taylor or Still.
No Puna
Ford. Technically, no Denzel Perryman, even though he's maybe the second linebacker. So the defense not super great, and I took some players early on defense because of the lack of depth. I mean, with Zont, with Colson, with Fox, just worried about everybody after them.
Yeah. If we had done like 15 players, I probably would have taken one of the tight ends too after Disley. I might have leaned Parham just because I feel like I'm less concerned about the injuries there, as crazy as it sounds. I don't know. That would have been a tougher decision for me. Like if I had to take a tight end, I don't know which way I would have gone, but that obviously was a consideration at some point for me. It was like, okay, like you took Disley. I don't have a tight end. The Chargers have not had a tight end for like 4 years. So that's also true.
Yeah. I would have gone Hurst over Parham just because Parham's injured, the concussions, the injuries, etc. Like I would have rather gone with Hurst.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So just to recap here, again, this was a draft for the next 3 seasons. We both get Justin Herbert in this scenario because, this would just make it completely unfair if one of us got Herbert or not. So Tyler went first. He took Rashawn Slater, then Tuli Tuipulotu, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel Jr., Junior Colson, Josh Palmer, Will Disley, Cameron Dicker, Morgan Fox, Darius Davis, Gus Edwards, and then wrapped it up with Jamari Sawyer. With my first pick, I took Joe Alt and then Lad McConkey, Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Lohi Gilman, Trey Pipkins, Zion Johnson, Quentin Johnston, Justin Eboigbe, Bud Dupree, Kimani Vidal, and then I wrapped with Cam Hart. So we just discussed some surprises, some honorable mentions, but those are our rosters. So you guys listening, make sure and tweet us. Let us know what you guys think. You guys here in the comments, who would you have taken in different orders, etc. We'll have a good time, obviously, discussing with you, debating who should have gone where and all that good stuff.
You're going to get killed for the Trey Pipkin selection. But
you know what? I think the public perception of Trey is just never really matched like the play that he's given the Chargers over the last 2 seasons. I've referenced this several times, but Timu Risk does this great data point of how to evaluate offensive tackle play based off of their it's kind of like rushing yards above expectation kind of deal, where it measures your respective assignments versus how you do against those players. And Trey, was he graded out above expected last season based off of his matchups. You know what you're getting from him just from you're at least getting a serviceable right tackle. And that's kind of where the Chargers roster is right now, where this guy who's maybe switching to right guard, maybe being a swing tackle is a top 6 pick in this exercise.
Yeah, well, at least you have Trey at right tackle.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll ever convince people that he was better than he showed out last year. Data points that way, but public perception, he's guilty in the public eye, I guess. So hopefully at guard it works out. I'm surprised by the move, but hopefully it works out.
Surprised at how early the move was announced.
That too.
Thought they would at least wait until they got pads on to really kind of settle that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to touch on the Brandon Aiyuk stuff or not?
Sure. Now that Sam Kim is gone and he hates our idea, we're not going to talk about some other things. So here we go.
All right. So this is who we are as a podcast, folks. This is why you love us. We love doing little draft episodes before we get into clickbait news of Brandon Aiyuk requesting a trade. So for those who don't know, Brandon Aiyuk is on the 49ers. He has 1 year left on his contract, which is the 5th year option. And then he's a free agent after that. He wants to get paid or he wants to get traded, and the 49ers want to do neither of those things, according to people who cover the team from The Athletic. So it's a dicey situation. People have kind of said like, oh, like Debo was the same thing last year, but Brandon Aiyuk is like actively watching Washington Commanders tape and like sharing it on Instagram and going on the Pivot podcast and saying like, yeah, I don't want to be on the 49ers unless I'm under contract. So extremely weird situation. He's a great player. What are your thoughts about the Chargers being, one of the designated potential landing spots for Brandon Aiyuk?
It's tricky because you can look at the scenario we just did and talk about both sides of the football and why it's a good or bad idea. So on the offensive side of the football, he's by far the best player.
If the Chargers had Brandon Aiyuk, he would have been the second. He would have been my first pick in this exercise.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt.
By far one of the best players they have. Period. And certainly as a weapon. We like McConkey, still unproven, rookie 2nd round pick. Palmer hasn't stayed healthy. Quentin could be a draft bust. Who knows? DJ Chark slowing down. Rice and Johnson 7th round picks. Aiyuk, bona fide superstar. So should the Chargers trade for Aiyuk? Hey, yeah. I'd love to have Aiyuk on the team, of course. And they're set up to be able to afford this because they have 10 picks next year if all things work out with comp picks. Depending on the moves they make, they could have $75 million in cap space. So they've got plenty of options next year to be able to absorb a trade for him and an extension. So it'd fit right in. The question just becomes, it's 2-parter. One, does the scheme even need him? Now, of course, Greg Roman would have a better offense with Aiyuk. There's no question about that. Everybody would. But does this offense need that? Or because of the trench play and the play action game and the run game, and in particular the deep play action game, do you need someone who's that good at separating instantly versus man coverage? Or do you just need several quality players who can push the ball down the field and can get open down the field? Again, Aiyuk can totally do that. I'm not saying he can't. But do you need one guy or do you need just a platoon of 3 to 4? Clearly, Joe Ortiz went the opposite direction so far this offseason. They cut Mike Williams, which I get, and they moved on from Keenan Allen. So I don't really see them going and getting the most expensive receiver they can get at this point.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is if we could pull the defense we just drafted just now and how we talked about this defense, the defense is not set up to be very good this year. and everyone believes in Jesse Minter, he could flat out be Brandon Staley. Now, maybe D coordinator is better, but he could not work out. We don't know for sure. And for all the hype about Minter's scheme, look at the Ravens did. They're not the Ravens. There's no Madubuike. There's no Queen. There's no Smith. There's no Humphrey. Van Noy, Clowney. Like this whole defense, that Ravens defense is not the Chargers defense. This defense needs help. And I'd rather, if they go take a swing at a premium position, it's at corner, it's at a pass rushing defensive tackle, which might be a bigger necessity to their side of the ball, to the defense, than Aiyuk would be on offense. I don't know if they need an Aiyuk as much as Minter is definitely going to need a star corner or a star defensive tackle. So I like Aiyuk. Of course, they'd be better with him, but I think they have to pass because you can't leave the defense out there like that. It's not going to be a good defense this year based on projections and history and data. And I got into that in my article. I wouldn't expect much until they trade for someone or add somebody else. I wouldn't go with Aiyuk, even though he would help this team.
Yeah, I think objectively he would upgrade this offensive roster. Whatever your thoughts are about it, Bill Barnwell wrote an article ranking the supporting cast of every single quarterback 1 through 32. And he put the Chargers at 32 because he just does not believe in the certainty of the wide receiver, running back, or tight end positions on this team. I think we like a lot of the players on it, but it's just a lot of question marks that need to be proven. So Brandon Aiyuk last season goes 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns in the regular season. Year before that, he was, I think, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. Extremely productive player. He was one of 3 receivers last season to hit over 3 yards per route run. And he was the only one who had a yards per reception mark of above 15 yards of those 3. And that includes Tyreek Hill in one of those wide receivers. So this is a guy who is extremely productive. I loved Brandon Aiyuk coming out of the draft. I think he has lived up to the selection where he was taken. There was like a weird little like doghouse situation in 2021 with him. Outside of that, he's just been awesome. And for me, if I'm running the 49ers, I'm not even remotely considering trading Brandon Aiyuk. So if this trade request leads to some phone calls, the 49ers price is going to be very, very high because Brandon Aiyuk is just that much of a true like difference maker. And the statistics of Deebo Samuel not being on the field, off the field, lead a lot of the public perception to think that Deebo is the more valuable player. But it really is Aiyuk. And Robert Mays pointed this out that over the last 10 years, there's been 6 wide receivers to run more than 400 routes and average over 3 yards per route run outside of this past season. So I think it's actually number 8. But one of them is Brandon Aiyuk. 2 of them are Julio Jones. One is Antonio Brown. One is Nico Collins. One is Justin Jefferson. Like it's an elite type of wide receiver profile from a data perspective. He can play the X, he can play the Z, he can play the slot. Absolutely fantastic player. And because of that, the 49ers, price tag, if they did decide to trade him, is going to be really high. Like I think at minimum, you're talking about the AJ Brown package that the Eagles sent to the Titans, which was a 1st-round pick and a 3rd-round pick. Do the Chargers, who are in kind of a retooling rebuild stage, can they afford to part with a 2025 1st-round pick to get Brandon Aiyuk on the team? Maybe. I think if you believe in Jim Harbaugh's ability to coach up enough, 2nd-round picks, 3rd-round picks, you can talk yourself into that. You can talk yourself into the value of having a true wide receiver 1. But to me, I think with the way that Joe Ortiz kind of plays this game, I don't think he wants to part with a 1st-round pick right off the bat. And so I would love the idea. It would make the Chargers so much better on offense, but you have to consider the trade acquisition cost, and then you're probably paying him $30 million plus per year, which really wouldn't be too expensive from a cap perspective until 2026 because of the way you can manipulate the first year of the contract. But those are all things that you have to take into account. It's not just like, oh, we're getting Brandon Aiyuk and we're putting him on the Chargers. Like there's so many other areas here that you have to talk about.
Yeah. Great points there all around. The idea of trading a 2025 1st-round pick is definitely not alluring. I actually think the pick would be less valuable, but next year, when it comes time for these discussions, I get why they traded 2026 first round pick,
Right.
the next year's first round pick.
Yeah.
Because in 2025, like I'm guessing in 2025, they draft like 15th to 22nd, somewhere in the middle of the draft. When they have all those picks and they're in year 2 and all these rookies develop and all the acquisitions, maybe pay off, we'll see. We have a cycle of comp picks. I think that they could go all in, be really good, and draft in the very end of the first round. So of course they'd have to give up maybe a higher day 2 pick or day 3 pick or whatever to make the same kind of trades. But I would rather give up that 2026 first in a trade next year, to trade for somebody next year. You can acquire them for the 2025 season, but trade for them maybe next year, whoever that is. It's probably not Aiyuk. I can't imagine it is. But whoever that would be, I'd rather they trade away that 2026 first than the 2025 first.
Yeah, and I think that's, from a roster standpoint, that is probably where the Chargers are at. Like, I think they're going to need their top picks next year, even after free agency, because so many of their current projected starters are on 1-year deals or could be cut after the season. There's a lot of question marks, right? Like, they're probably going to need 2 corners next year. They're probably going to need 2 new defensive tackles. They might need a 3rd edge rusher. Like, there's all these needs on defense. They don't have a receiving tight end under contract after this current season. Potentially no interior offensive lineman that you trust. So it's like there's all these scenarios that Joe Ortiz is weighing when you consider this kind of trade acquisition, and I think it leads to a no. And I just think the Chargers would again be a lot better with Brandon Aiyuk on the roster, but I just think there's too many question marks for them to go out and trade a first round pick. And for anybody who thinks that it wouldn't cost a first round pick, like, the 49ers are trying to win a Super Bowl in 2024. They are not going to part with one of their 6 or 7 best players for a second round pick in 2025. Like, you're going to have to convince them to trade him to you. And I think that is potentially even like multiple first round picks, given the way that the wide receiver market is valued right now.
Yeah. And the Chargers are not good enough this year for that, unfortunately. Now, I guess we've talked about Newsome. We've talked about some other players they could trade for. But again, with the offense and what they're going to ask these guys to do, I don't know. So again, you said it. We said it. Aiyuk on the team. Great. Sounds fun. Sounds awesome. But this team is not there yet. I don't think it fits.
Yeah. I don't think it fits the timeline. I think it fits the roster. Obviously, it makes the roster better. But it doesn't check enough boxes. Like, when you're considering a trade acquisition, there's like multiple boxes. You got to check the timeline box. You got to check the trade acquisition costs, contract costs, everything like that. For everything bad that Tom Telesco did, trading for Khalil Mack was like a perfect trade because it fit the timeline. He was affordable. You don't have to take on a ton of cap space. You're not trading a ton of picks. Yes, it was a second round pick essentially. But for a potentially, elite edge rusher, that's worth it. Me and you have talked about potential trades outside of Brandon Aiyuk, and it's like, maybe you can throw a 3rd round pick to Seattle and see if you can get Draymond Jones. You can throw a 3rd round pick to the Saints and maybe get Marshawn Lattimore, or to the Browns and get Greg Newsome. That's the kind of trade where the Chargers are at right now, and I think all of those trades would be extremely helpful. But the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, like, that's different territory. And I think people are maybe discounting just how much this would cost, because the Niners' points of reference are going to be the AJ Brown trade and the Tyreek Hill trade, which the Tyreek Hill trade was multiple first round picks and a second round pick and a 3rd round pick. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle there. And that's just not where the Chargers can afford to live, unfortunately.
No, I agree. So sounds fun. I promise we will be all for a trade at some point. Like, we don't just always negative Nancy this thing, but it has to work out. It has to fit. We were excited about the Khalil Mack trade. So I promise we do get excited for these trades. Just not every single one of them.
Yeah, we did a whole in-depth trade video a few weeks ago. You guys can go back and revisit that if you want to see some like actually trades that we think could be possibilities. I do think that this team is in a perfect position to have a mid-season acquisition trade. We are going to do videos about that, and we're going to be very excited about that. It's just like the Brandon Aiyuk Chargers timeline is just not checking the box, and unfortunately, I do believe you have to check that box. But That being said, man, if they trade for him, like, hell yeah, I'm going to be excited. I love Brandon Aiyuk. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. I loved him coming out of Arizona State. I think the whole thing about him being a pain in the ass is kind of silly to me. This is just kind of the world we live in, man. Like, star players, if they don't get paid, like, this is just what they do. Like,
Yeah.
you request a trade, and then if you don't get it, then you sign the contract, and everything's, easy peasy.
Yeah, it happens all the time. If it were just about only players who were never a pain in the ass, half the NFL would be gone. So we would just have like Justin Herbert like by himself.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I don't think he's the pain in the ass that everyone seems to be maybe making him out to be.
Yeah, I mean, basically like 10 times in off season, there's an NFL player who like scrubs his social media, requests a trade.
Oh yeah.
It's like every team it deals with this once a year, I feel like.
Oh yeah. Have the Chargers had that?
Well, Eckler requested a trade last year.
Oh yeah.
He didn't scrub social media because he just like, he's very open about his opinion. So he just is like, I want to trade.
And that got taken care of pretty early. So
yeah. He at least had the decency to do this in the winter, not a week before training camp.
Woke up and went, oh man, I need $30 million. So I guess I would hold out if someone could tell me I could get $30 million. I love my kids, but I'll hold out for $30 million.
Yeah. But from the 49ers perspective, man, they reportedly could have signed Brandon Aiyuk for like a Mike Williams type contract last year. And they decided to wait. And now they're, I'm sure, kicking themselves that they did not get that done.
Oops.
Yeah. Oops. All right. Good conversations there. Again, Tyler wrote 2 articles about this conversation as well as the Stephon Gilmore conversation, which I am 100% in favor of. I think we all are, basically anybody who's watching this team. So yeah. All right. That's going to do it for us today. We are going to have an episode later this week. It's not going to be live, but we have an interview that we will be dropping. Hopefully, if it doesn't happen, we will come live. We'll see what happens, but we'll keep you guys posted. And then we are, full steam ahead to training camp next week. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Speaking of training camp, I got my tickets and I will be there the first day with my parents. Thank you to my dad. As I said on Twitter, a Raiders fan who waited in line and got the tickets for me because I was 5 minutes late and I forgot it was even happening. So, thank you, Dad, for taking care of that for me.
Yeah, I was in a meeting. It was supposed to end at 10 and I was going to end the meeting, get right in line. Meeting went late and I hopped online at like 10:07 and I was like 4,000th in line. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get tickets, but Alex, who's flying out from Florida, was able to get us tickets. So Alex and I will be at the Back Together Saturday. And then the 3 of us will be at practice on that Monday for the full padded practice. So should be a lot of fun. Excited to get down there, have some real football content to talk about. I have missed football so much, and I can't wait to see it in person in the next few weeks. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. That's going to do it for us. As always, bolt up.